Well, nowadays you got to have that confidence because people nowadays.
Before we get straight into the podcast, I just want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Declan Kirby GAA Star. Declan Kirby GAA Star Championship Journey. It's a series of GAA team children's books written by primary school teacher and GAA coach Michael Egan. You can check it out in the link in the description down below, of course, as well. Follow the trials and tribulations of Declan Kirby and his team at Smithgreen Gaelic Football Club, recently formed but promising GAA team. The book is now available in Easons and all good bookshops, so check it out in the description down below, and let's get straight into it. What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. I hope you're all keeping wonderfully well. It's the hurling preview show for this weekend's hurling action, of course, taking place in this weekend's All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. We've obviously got two games, of course, taking place in the All-Ireland Championship. We've obviously got Waterford, of course, going up against Galway. Clare are playing Cork. We've also got a relegation battle taking place, of course, back over in the National Hurling League. Of course, the relegation playoff was scheduled later down the line. Of course, it all depended on how far Laois progressed, of course, in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. And obviously, they were beaten, of course, last weekend by Waterford. We've got a big Christy Ring game coming up, of course, as well. Offaly are taking on Wicklow. Of course, with the battle up for place as to who makes the Christy Ring Cup final, still up for grabs, and of course as to who makes the final and who wins the final is very much still up for grabs as well. Of course, if you are new around here, do hit the like button and subscribe. I would kindly appreciate it. And of course, without further ado, let's get straight into it. So we'll start first of all by discussing the, of course, Waterford and Galway game, of course, that's taking place on the Saturday afternoon. I mean, this is going to be a very interesting game because I suppose, first of all, this is a repeat of the 2017 All-Ireland final. You know, these two sides haven't played each other since then. And I mean, it's mad to think of the sort of way things have gone for both counties since that final. You know, neither side has obviously come up against each other. Waterford have gone on to make it an All-Ireland final. Galway obviously the same as well, of course, in 2018. But now both of these two sides playing each other, of course, in a game to decide who gets into an All-Ireland quarter-final. I mean, both sides were coming into this year's championship, in my opinion anyways. Waterford having finished the league quite strong. Galway having looked very impressive in the league. Probably the best team in the league, in my opinion, in Division 1. And certainly both sides were coming in with a lot of expectation, and both sides were very much expected to win probably their opening games and progress along through the championship and maybe meet each other in a semi-final or something to that effect, and at least be the closest to challenge Limerick. That hasn't happened, though, in the slightest. You know, Waterford losing in very disappointing fashion to Clare. I think the 4-point defeat very much flattered them. They could have easily been beaten by much more on the day. Clare only had 50% accuracy. And as for Galway, I mean, they were just absolutely horrendous against Dublin. They were so poor all across the pitch. I mean, they were arrogant in front of goal, going for goal chances that weren't there early on. Joe Cannon dropping a lot of chances wide. Just a very uncharacteristic and poor and sort of, you know, complacent performance from Galway against Dublin. So both sides will want to right the wrong, and I think for both sides it's a huge game. And I'm looking at Galway in particular because the pressure for me is on them coming into this game. You know, the thoughts of Galway not winning a championship game in a season where a lot of people had them as the side that were going to win the All-Ireland. I'll be honest, I fancied Galway to win the All-Ireland this year because I felt that originally you have the likes of your Joe Cannings, your Cathal Mannions, a lot of players, you know, David Burke, Daithí Burke, a lot of players in that Galway side that are probably coming to the end of their time, and this is now their one last big push. You know, for the likes of your Mannions and for the likes of your Joe Cannings, for example, they're not going to be there every year, and I think with a lot of those kind of senior players, I really expected them to kick on. And obviously you've got a bunch of youth players coming into the side. Brian Concannon, for example, Evan Nyland as well. So they've kind of had that match of experience and youth, and I felt like that would be enough to really fire Galway on and potentially win an All-Ireland. But obviously the Dublin game has very much changed my opinion and probably changed the opinion of a lot of people. And going up against a Waterford side that certainly weren't at their best against Laois, like, let's be perfectly honest. They did dig deep in extra time and they got the job done and they done enough in the end, but certainly wasn't anywhere near their absolute best. And you're looking at the injuries in Waterford in particular. Obviously Tadhg de Burka, Conor Prunty came back against Laois but probably still didn't look his absolute best. Stephen O'Keefe isn't there. Jamie Barron's injured as well. So many injuries all across the board. You're talking about a midfielder, you know, a fullback, a centre back, so many players, a goalkeeper, like an absolute spine of their team has been cut apart from injuries. You know, if any other team in the country was to lose 1, 3, 6 and 8, I mean, that would just be huge for them. So I mean, and look, listen, Conor Prunty obviously came back. Jamie Barron, of course, came off the bench in the Laois game. So those players are coming back to fitness, and you would wonder, you do feel like a game like this is probably a bit too soon. You'd get the feeling that Waterford maybe would have rather played Cork or Clare or something like that. But at the same time, Galway haven't played a game last week, so Galway haven't had a chance to avenge that defeat, and they really will want to right the wrong. Like, there's no two questions about it. And obviously, looking at Galway in that game versus Dublin, like, just so poor, and like Conor Whelan, the only player really who can kind of look at it and kind of hold his head up high, in my opinion, coming out of that game, scoring 1-2. Like, Joe Canning very quiet, Brian Concannon didn't score at all. So like, all sorts of problems really coming into the game for Galway, considering how poor they were against Dublin. In fairness, Austin Gleeson's been fantastic so far for Waterford. He's really stood up to the occasion and done what was needed, and it will be interesting to see where he lines out. He lined up in midfield against Laois, but could we see him in around the full forward line, maybe going up against Daithí Burke? That would certainly be a matchup for the ages, so that would certainly be an interesting one. And like, Waterford's defence, though, in my opinion, is just a little bit inexperienced. You've got Ian Kenny, who's come in there. Caleb Lyons, we just haven't seen the best of him this year as opposed to last year. Doesn't seem to have that same attacking output. Kevin Moran's obviously in there. Irla Daly looked decent, to be fair to him, in the All-Ireland final when he came off the bench, but still a very young player and still a bit inexperienced. O'Brien, obviously, in goal, is an up-and-coming goalkeeper, of course, for Waterford as well. So personally, I just feel that Galway will have a bit too much. I think the likes of Brian Concannon, Evan Nyland, if they get firing, I think they'll cause all sorts of problems in that defensive line. Like, you're looking at maybe Conor Gleeson going up against Brian Concannon, Conor Whelan going up against Ian Kenny. I feel that they'd have the better of those matchups that Galway would. And I feel in the midfield as well with Joe Canning, like, he'll want to right that wrong of that Dublin game. He's obviously chasing the record as well, of course, to become the all-time scorer in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. So I think Galway will have enough for Waterford. I think, like, I don't know, maybe Waterford could surprise a few people and put in a brilliant performance, but personally, I just think that Waterford will, or I just feel that Galway, I should say, will have a bit more than Waterford on their day, and they'll end up winning by 3 points. You've then got Cork going up against Clare, and what is a repeat of another All-Ireland final, of course, that's happened in recent seasons. Obviously, the 2013 final between Clare and Cork, of course, when they met in the 2013 All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. Of course, that day it was Clare who got the job done, obviously, after a replay, and obviously neither side has reached an All-Ireland final since, and both sides have, very much changed their team entirely. Like, Patrick Horgan's still in there for Cork, obviously Seamus Harnedy, and obviously for Clare you've got the likes of Tony Kelly, who was obviously part of that team, and of course Shane O'Donnell and whatnot as well, who obviously won't be involved in this game. But yeah, look, listen, it's going to be interesting, this game between the two. I mean, Cork are very much, like, they're on an upward trajectory in terms of the young players they're bringing through at the moment. They're looking very good at under 20 level as well. Like, they gave Tipperary an absolute beating in midweek. They obviously gave Clare an absolute hammer and beat them by like 40 points. I think that was at minor level actually, but nonetheless, like, Cork are on an upward trajectory, and like, realistically speaking, you'd probably say that Cork will probably win an All-Ireland sooner than Clare, but Clare are coming into this game on the back of a lot of confidence. They've had more championship wins. I think, Tony Kelly didn't score from play in the last game, and I think that's a positive, because Clare still racked up with a total of 225. Aaron Shanahan has been brilliant this year. He's really got more involved. Aidan McCarthy's been fantastic as well, playing in multiple different positions, getting forward at wing-back as well. So Clare are coming in with a lot of confidence, and I feel like they will smell the blood of Cork in many ways, because I think Cork are coming into this game with a bit of pressure, actually, because Cork, the fact that Cork will come into this game without having won a championship game is just mind-boggling. It's a bit like the Galway situation. And look, listen, Cork, for example, in the league, were very dynamic. They were playing sure hand passing. Their midfielders were getting forward, the likes of Dara Fitzgibbon. You obviously have Tim O'Mahony at wing back. Like, they were all getting forward. They're all getting in the right position. The likes of your Shane Kingstons, Patrick Horgan, just getting on the end of loose balls and scoring a number of goals. Cork were scoring all sorts of goals really throughout the league. But in the Limerick game, in my opinion, there was an opportunity for them there to really kick on, to really go for it, to really potentially go and kind of put out a marker. And look, listen, I don't think they would have beaten Limerick, but they certainly could have made it a closer game. And in the final 5 to 10 minutes, rather than going for goals, they were going for points, and I felt like they looked beaten even before the final whistle even came. And that certainly would be a worry from a Cork point of view. Like, they certainly do have a lot to work on that angle. And I think if they attack Clare, if they go at them and they cause them problems, they get men forward, they get their wing backs forward, they get their midfielders forward, they could cause all sorts of problems for Clare. Now, the only worry is that they leave spaces in behind, and when you're leaving the likes of your Tony Kellys and whatnot, maybe without a man to pick up, like, I mean, he could have an absolute field day. He really, really could. So it's going to be interesting. But I think what we've seen in the Wexford game, like I think Wexford done a fantastic job on Tony Kelly. They, he didn't score from play in that game, and Davy Fitz got his matchups right on that occasion. But what we seen was that the likes of Aaron Shanahan, the likes of Ian Galvin, for example, the likes of Mark Rogers coming off the bench, Aidan McCarthy getting forward, David Reedy as well. Like Clare have the options now, and they're not as reliant on Tony Kelly as what they would have been last year. And I think for me, like Clare they're just dark horses. Like I don't think they'll win an All Ireland, but I think getting to a semi final is not impossible, because if they win this game, they'll play Dublin in an All Ireland quarter final, because obviously Galway can't play Dublin, if Galway come through the Waterford game. So, Clare Clare can't play Tipperary. So Clare could go on and play Dublin in an All-Ireland quarter-final, come through that, which most people would feel they probably would, even for myself as a Dublin fan. So I think Clare have got a massive, massive opportunity here to beat Cork, to send out a marker, to go on a bit of a run to an All-Ireland semi-final, and you just never know from there. And they have the quality, and it's one of those things in sports, like when you have a player, one of the best players on the pitch, in that sport, in your team, you've always got a chance. And I think for Clare, not only do they have that, but they also have other options now as well. So I think Clare are a very dangerous proposition, and I think, like, I have a feeling that it's only going to be one of the top teams that beats them this year. And I think for Cork, whilst they do have a lot of young lads coming through, obviously Alan Connolly has looked very bright. A lot of under 20 players obviously coming through at the moment. I think the future is bright for Cork, and I think losing this game isn't even the end of the world. I think they'll come back stronger next year, and I think they'll be thereabouts in the next 3 or 4 years, you'd have to say, with the players that are coming through. So I do think that Clare will get the victory by a point. I think it could be extra time, it could go beyond that, it could go to penalties, but I'm going to go with Clare. I think they'll just have a bit too much going forward, and I think for Cork there's a little bit of inexperience in that team, whereas Clare have played a lot of championship games already this year, so I'm going to go with Clare to get the victory. And then in the Division 1 relegation playoff, you've got Westmeath going up against Laois, and I mean, this is another intriguing game between these two. I mean, Westmeath, first of all, obviously coming in on the back of that Joe McDonagh Cup success, obviously beating Kerry by a scoreline of 229 to 124. And obviously I didn't see the game live, but I did go back and seen a bit of the highlights and whatnot, and kind of seen some of their play. They won the game quite comfortably in the end. They've certainly been on an upward trajectory ever since their league. They obviously played a lot of high quality opposition in the league, of course, in Division 1A. It was always going to be very tough for them. I mean, let's be honest, I don't think anyone ever expected them to win a game up in Division 1A. They've come through the Kildare game, they came through the Carlow game, they've gone on to beat Kerry quite comfortably. In terms of Laois, Laois obviously had a very tough Division 1B campaign, then got hammered by Wexford, of course, in the Leinster Championship, went and beat Antrim, very much the unthinkable. I don't think many people expected them to do so, and they gave Waterford quite a good test last week as well. Like, they were really, really impressive in that game. Patrick Purcell's been brilliant so far since coming back into the side. PJ Scully's been brilliant as well. Chad Warr, of course, as well. So, like, fair play to Laois. They really, really do deserve a lot of credit, and they certainly will look to push Westmeath quite closely in this game. And to be honest with you, I feel like Laois are going to get the victory here, because I think for Laois, like, they're coming in with a little more confidence, in my opinion. They've been playing higher opposition as well. Like, they played Antrim, they then played Waterford, ran them close, whereas Westmeath, okay, they came close enough to Waterford in the league as well, but Waterford made I think like 14 changes in that game. So I think, like, Laois are just coming in with a little more confidence, in my opinion. Although Westmeath will be coming in confidence as well. I mean, they just won the Joe McDonagh Cup. They'll be playing in the Leinster Championship next year. So, I mean, it's going to be close. I really don't see much between Laois and Westmeath. I think they're two sides that have very much been on an even kind of trajectory in recent seasons. But I think Laois's hard work in Division 1 and their hard work in the Leinster Championship over the past couple of years, the wins against Dublin, coming close to beating Clare last year, for example, I think it will stand to them. And I think they do have the quality there. And I think they have the backs as well to neutralise Killian Doyle, Kieran Doyle as well, and even Davy Glennon to a certain extent. So I think Laois will get the victory. I think they'll have enough. I think they're coming into this game, buoyed up by a very fantastic performance against Waterford, a game which they probably could have won going into the closing stages, and obviously haven't beaten Antrim as well. So I'm going to go with Laois to get the victory by 2 points. You've then got Offaly and Wicklow, of course, in the Christy Ring Cup, one of the semi-finals, of course, that's taken place. And look, listen, you'd have to fancy Offaly to get the job done here. I mean, after coming through Division 2A in the way that they did, winning every game so comfortably. Wicklow on the other hand side of things, never won a game, never really looked like ever winning a game. So I think Offaly will have too much for Wicklow, in my opinion, with the likes of Owen Cahill, Liam Langton in the team. I think they will have a bit too much. So I'm going to go with Offaly to get the victory by 5 or 6. And I fully do expect them to come through the Christy Ring Cup, in my opinion. I think they've been brilliant so far this year. A lot of young lads coming through, looking very good at minor and under 20 level as well. So I'm going to go with Offaly to get the victory, and I think they'll win it by 5 or 6. But anyways, lads, we'll go ahead and wrap this up here. Do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I do kindly appreciate all the recent comments and messages and whatnot, so I do kindly appreciate them. And stay tuned for more videos, match reactions, of course. They'll be out over the weekend, covering all the games, of course, in both football and hurling. So stay safe, stay well, and I'll see you later.